Welcome to the new video, Old Crypto Coin in the fascinating world of United States coin collecting. Few pieces capture the spirit of American history and leadership quite like the $1 coins featuring Andrew Jackson, George Washington, and Ulysses S. Grant, three iconic presidents whose legacies have been immortalized through these remarkable coins, each telling a powerful story of the nation's growth and triumph. And as we dive deep into their history, design, symbolism, and value, we begin with the Andrew Jackson $1 coin. Part of the presidential $1 coin program launched in 2007, a series created to honor former U.S. presidents in the order they served. And Andrew Jackson, the seventh president of the United States serving from 1829 to 1837, is remembered as a leader known for his strong personality, controversial policies, and role in expanding presidential powers. His coin was released in 2008, featuring a bold portrait of Jackson on the obverse side, capturing his determined expression, while the reverse side showcases a Statue of Liberty, a consistent design across the series symbolizing freedom and democracy. The edge lettering includes the year of minting, mint mark, and the motto, E Pluribus Unum, a unique feature that makes these coins stand out from traditional U.S. coinage. Collectors often look for variations in edge lettering, as errors can increase the coin's value significantly. Moving on to George Washington, the very first president of the United States and one of the most revered figures in American history. His $1 coin was the very first coin released in the presidential series in 2007, marking a historic beginning to this ambitious program. Washington served from 1789 to 1797 and is widely known as the father of his country. His leadership during the American Revolutionary War and his role in shaping the U.S. Constitution cemented his place as a national hero. The George Washington dollar coin features a dignified portrait of him facing left, with inscriptions including George Washington, first president, and the years of his presidency. The reverse again carries the Statue of Liberty, reinforcing the unifying theme of liberty across all coins in the series. One of the most famous varieties of this coin is the godless dollar, an error coin where the edge lettering was missing, making it highly sought after by collectors and sometimes valued much higher than its face. Value. These rare minting errors have made the Washington dollar coin particularly exciting in the numismatic community. Now turning to Ulysses S. Grant, the 18th president of the United States who served from 1869 to 1877, a man whose legacy is deeply tied to the Civil War and Reconstruction era. Before becoming president, Grant was a commanding general of the Union Army and played a crucial role in leading the North to victory during the Civil War. His leadership under President Abraham Lincoln made him a national hero, and his presidency focused on rebuilding the nation after the war and protecting the rights of newly freed African Americans, though his administration faced criticism due to corruption scandals. Grant himself was widely respected for his honesty and dedication. His $1 coin was released in 2011 as part of the same presidential series, featuring a strong and detailed portrait of Grant on the obverse, while the reverse continues the Statue of Liberty. Design, maintaining the consistency of the series. Collectors appreciate the Grant dollar coin not only for its historical significance, but also for its connection to one of the most defining periods in American history. All three of these coins are composed primarily of a manganese brass alloy, giving them a distinctive golden color. Although they are not made of actual gold, they still carry a rich appearance that makes them visually appealing. Each coin has a diameter of 26.5 millimeters and weighs 8.1 grams, making them slightly larger and heavier than a quarter. Despite their beauty and historical importance, these coins are not widely used in everyday transactions, which adds to their collectability. Many people keep them as souvenirs or part of coin collections rather than spending them. The presidential $1 coin program itself ran from 2007 to 2016 and honored a total of 39 presidents, stopping after reaching Ronald Reagan. As per the program's rules that only deceased presidents could be featured, the program aimed to educate the public about U.S. history and encourage coin usage, though it faced challenges due to low circulation demand. From a collector's perspective, the value of Andrew Jackson, George Washington, and Ulysses S. Grant $1 coins can vary depending on their condition, mint mark, and rarity. Coins in uncirculated or proof condition, especially those graded by professional services, can fetch higher prices, while common circulated coins typically remain close to their face value. However, error coins, special editions, or coins with historical packaging can be worth significantly more. For example, a Washington dollar with missing edge lettering can sell for hundreds of dollars depending on its condition. Similarly, pristine examples of the Jackson and Grant coins can also attract premium prices among serious collectors beyond their monetary value. These coins serve as miniature pieces of history, each one representing the life and legacy of a leader who helped shape the United States. They offer a tangible connection to the past, allowing collectors and enthusiasts to hold history in their hands. Whether you are a seasoned numismatist or a beginner just starting your coin collection journey, these $1 coins provide a fascinating entry point into the world of American coinage. They combine artistry, history, and value in a way that few other collectibles can match, as we reflect on Andrew Jackson's bold leadership, George Washington's foundational role, and Ulysses S. Grant's wartime heroism and post-war presidency. These coins remind us of the diverse and complex history of the United States, a story of struggle, growth, and resilience. And in the end, collecting these coins is not just about their financial worth, but about preserving and appreciating the stories they carry, stories that continue to inspire generations, and keep the legacy of these alive in a truly unique and meaningful way. Step 1, the story of Andrew Jackson and the years 1829 to 1837 is one of the most dramatic, controversial, and transformative periods in the history of the United States of America, a time when the nation was still young but rapidly evolving, and when the presidency itself was being redefined in ways that still influence American politics today. Because when Andrew Jackson took office in 1829 as the 7th president, he was not just another leader stepping into power, but a symbol of a new kind of democracy, one that claimed to represent the common man rather than the elite political class that had dominated earlier administrations. And this shift was immediately visible in his inauguration, where thousands of ordinary citizens flooded Washington, D.C., celebrating what they believed was their victory, a moment that marked the rise of what historians often call Jacksonian democracy, a political movement that emphasized greater participation for white male citizens, a stronger executive branch, and a deep suspicion of centralized financial power. And as Jackson began his presidency, he quickly made it clear that he would govern in a bold and sometimes aggressive manner, often relying on his personal judgment and popular support rather than traditional political norms, which led to both admiration and fierce criticism, especially as he introduced the spoils system, a practice of rewarding political supporters with government jobs, arguing that it made government more democratic. Though critics saw it as corruption and favoritism, and one of the most defining conflicts of Jackson's presidency came in the form of the Bank War, a political struggle against the Second Bank of the United States, which Jackson believed was an institution that favored wealthy elites and foreign investors at the expense of ordinary Americans. And despite the bank's role in stabilizing the national economy, Jackson vetoed its rec charter in 1832, portraying himself as a defender of the people against powerful financial interests, a move that strengthened his popularity among supporters but alarmed many economists and politicians, leading to long-term financial instability. And at the same time, Jackson faced a serious constitutional crisis known as the Nullification Crisis, centered in the state of South Carolina, where leaders argued that states had the right to nullify or ignore federal laws they deemed unconstitutional, particularly tariffs that they believed harmed their economy. And Jackson, despite being a strong advocate of states' rights in some contexts, took a firm stand against nullification, declaring that the Union must be preserved at all costs, even threatening military action to enforce federal authority, which demonstrated his unwavering commitment to national unity. Yet perhaps the most controversial and tragic aspect of Jackson's presidency was his policy toward Native Americans, particularly the passage of the Indian Removal Act of 1830, which authorized the forced relocation of thousands of Native Americans from their ancestral lands in the southeastern United States to territories west of the Mississippi River, a policy that led to immense suffering and loss of life, most notably during the Trail of Tears, where thousands of members of tribes such as the Cherokee, Creek, Choctaw, Chickasaw, and Seminole were forced to march under harsh conditions, resulting in the deaths of many men, women, and children, a dark chapter in American history that continues to be remembered and studied today. And throughout his presidency, Jackson's leadership style remained intensely personal and often polarizing, as he relied heavily on a group of informal advisors known as the Kitchen Cabinet, bypassing his official cabinet when he felt it necessary, which further fueled debates about the proper limits of presidential power. And despite the controversies, Jackson was reelected in 1832 by a wide margin, defeating Henry Clay, who had championed the American system of economic development, showing that Jackson's message resonated strongly with a large portion of the electorate. And as his second term progressed, the consequences of his policies began to unfold, particularly in the economic sphere, where his dismantling of the national bank and distribution of federal funds to state banks, often called pet banks, contributed to speculative lending and economic instability, eventually playing a role in the Panic of 1837, a major financial crisis that began shortly after Jackson left office but was closely linked to his economic decisions. And by the time his presidency ended in 1837, Jackson had fundamentally changed the role of the president, expanding executive power and establishing the idea that the president was a direct representative of the people, not just an administrator of laws passed by Congress. And he retired to his plantation, the Hermitage in Tennessee, remaining an influential political figure and advisor to his successor, Martin Van Buren. But his legacy has remained deeply complex and debated, as some view him as a champion of democracy and a defender of the common citizen, while others criticize his policies, particularly regarding Native Americans and his approach to economic management, as harmful and unjust. And even today, Andrew Jackson's presidency continues to spark discussion about the balance between popular leadership and responsible governance, the limits of executive power, and the moral responsibilities of a nation toward all its people, making the years 1829 to 1837 not just a chapter in history, but a powerful story of ambition, conflict, transformation, and the enduring struggle to define what democracy truly means in the United States of America. Step 2, when we talk about the birth of the United States as a nation, one name stands above all others: George Washington, a man whose leadership between 1789 and 1797 shaped the very foundation of American democracy, setting precedents that still guide the country today. As the first president of the United States, Washington stepped into a role that had no blueprint, no historical guide, and no guarantee of success. Yet through wisdom, restraint, and an unshakable sense of duty, he transformed uncertainty into stability, beginning his presidency in 1789 after the ratification of the United States Constitution, which established a framework for a federal government unlike any the world had seen before. And from the very first moment, Washington understood that his every action would set a precedent, from the way he addressed Congress to how he formed his cabinet, carefully selecting trusted leaders like Alexander Hamilton as Secretary of the Treasury and Thomas Jefferson as Secretary of State, creating a team that would help navigate the young nation through economic uncertainty and political division, as the country faced enormous challenges, including war debt, fragile unity among the states, and skepticism from powerful European nations. Yet Washington's leadership brought calm and confidence, especially when he supported Hamilton's financial plan to stabilize the economy by assuming state debts and establishing a national bank, a controversial move that sparked the first political divisions between Federalists and Democratic Republicans, but one that ultimately strengthened the nation's financial credibility. During his presidency, Washington also demonstrated the power of neutrality in foreign affairs, particularly when tensions rose between Britain and France during the French Revolution, choosing not to involve the United States in European conflicts, a decision that was not popular with everyone but proved essential in keeping the young nation out of war and allowing it to grow stronger internally. And perhaps one of the most defining moments of his presidency came during the Whiskey Rebellion, when farmers protested against a federal excise tax, challenging the authority of the new government. And unlike the weak central authority under the Articles of Confederation, Washington decisively responded by leading federal troops to enforce the law, proving that the new government had both the will and the power to maintain order. Yet even in this show of strength, he remained committed to justice and restraint, pardoning many of the rebels afterward, reinforcing the idea that the government existed not to oppress but to serve its people. Throughout his presidency, Washington was deeply aware of the dangers of political division, warning against the rise of factions and parties that could tear the nation apart, advice he famously expressed in his farewell address in 1796, where he also cautioned against long-term foreign alliances. and emphasized the importance of national unity, morality, and education, a speech that remains one of the most influential documents in American political history. And perhaps one of his greatest contributions was not just what he did while in office, but what he chose not to do, as he voluntarily stepped down after 2 terms, rejecting the idea of lifelong power and setting a precedent for a peaceful transfer of authority that would later become a cornerstone of American democracy. And in doing so, Washington proved that true leadership lies not in holding on to power, but in knowing when to pass it on, leaving office in 1797 and returned to his home at Mount Vernon, his legacy firmly established as a father of the nation, a leader who could have become a king, but chose instead to be a servant of the Republic. And even centuries later, his presidency remains a powerful example of integrity, vision, and responsibility, reminding us that the strength of a nation is built not just on laws and institutions, but on the character of those who lead it. And as we reflect on the years between 1789 and 1797, we see not just the story of presidency, but the story of a nation finding its identity under the steady guidance of a man who understood the weight of history and rose to meet it with courage and humility, shaping the future of the United States in ways that continue to influence the world today. Step lost Ulysses S. Grant is one of the most fascinating and complex figures in the history of the United States, a man whose life journey took him from humble beginnings to the very highest levels of military and political power, shaping the nation during some of its most turbulent years, and leaving behind a legacy that is still debated and studied today. Born on April 27, 1822, in Point Pleasant, Ohio, Ulysses S. Grant grew up in a modest family where his father worked as a tanner, a profession that young Grant disliked deeply. Yet this early exposure to hard work helped shape his discipline and resilient character, even if he showed little interest in academics or business at the time. But everything changed when he was appointed to the United States Military Academy at West Point, where he reluctantly began his formal military training, initially struggling with strict discipline, but eventually finding his strengths, particularly in horsemanship and perseverance. Graduating in 1843 without much distinction, but with a determination that would later define his career, his early military service during the Mexican-American War provided him with valuable battlefield experience, where he served under notable generals and learned strategies that he would later apply during a much larger conflict, the American Civil War. Although after the war he experienced a period of personal struggle, leaving the Army and attempting various civilian jobs, including farming, and working in his family's leather business. But none of these ventures brought him success, and he faced financial hardship that tested his spirit and resolve. Yet destiny had other plans, and when the Civil War broke out in 1861, Grant returned to military service, quickly rising through the ranks due to his determination, strategic thinking, and ability to remain calm under pressure. Unlike many other commanders who hesitated, Grant believed in taking decisive action, which led to key victories such as the capture of Fort Donelson, where his demand for unconditional surrender earned him national attention and the nickname Unconditional Surrender Grant, a moment that marked the beginning of his rise as one of the Union's most important generals. As the war progressed, Grant demonstrated a relentless approach to warfare, understanding that the Union's advantage in manpower and resources could only be fully utilized through continuous pressure on Confederate forces. His leadership during campaigns such as Vicksburg proved crucial, effectively splitting the Confederacy and giving the Union control of the Mississippi River, a turning point in the war that significantly weakened the Southern states. And it was this success that caught the attention of President Abraham Lincoln, who recognized Grant's determination and appointed him as the commanding general of the Union Army, trusting him to lead the nation's forces to victory. Grant's strategy of total war and coordinated attacks across multiple fronts ultimately led to the surrender of Confederate General Robert E. Lee at Appomattox Courthouse in 1865, effectively ending the Civil War and preserving the Union. And in that moment, Grant became a national hero, admired for his leadership and his magnanimity in victory, as he offered generous terms of surrender that aimed to begin healing a deeply divided nation rather than prolong resentment. Following the war, Grant's popularity propelled him into politics, and in 1868 he was elected as the 18th President of the United States, serving 2 terms during the Reconstruction era, a time when the country faced the enormous challenge of rebuilding the South and integrating formerly enslaved people into American society. Grant supported civil rights for African Americans and worked to combat the rise of violent groups like the Ku Klux Klan, using federal power to enforce new laws and protect citizens. Although his presidency was also marked by significant challenges, including political scandals involving members of his administration, which, while not directly implicating Grant himself, damaged his reputation and overshadowed many of his accomplishments. Yet despite these controversies, historians today often reassess his presidency more favorably, recognizing his efforts to promote justice and equality during a difficult period in American history. After leaving the presidency, Grant embarked on a world tour, becoming a global celebrity and meeting leaders across Europe and Asia, showcasing his status not just as an American hero, but as an international figure of significance. However, his later years were marked by financial difficulties once again, due to poor investments and betrayal by business partners, leaving him nearly bankrupt. But even in the face of illness and hardship, Grant displayed remarkable determination, writing his memoirs while battling throat cancer, completing them just days before his death in 1885. And these memoirs are now considered one of the finest works of military literature ever written, praised for their clarity, honesty, and insight into leadership and war. Today, Ulysses S. Grant is remembered as a symbol of perseverance, leadership, and resilience, a man who rose from obscurity and failure to become one of the most important figures in American history, his legacy spanning military brilliance, political challenges, and personal determination, reminding us that greatness is often forged through adversity, and his story continues to inspire generations as an example of how courage, persistence, and integrity can shape not only a life, but the course of an entire nation.